Jamie, I got to admit, not even halfway through, when you were talking about your granddad, it suddenly dawned on me, Eureka-like, that your granddad was the famous, infamous Charles Benson.
Infamous.
I've read a lot about him in Robert Sangster's own book, and it suddenly dawned on me. So for anybody that was watching that's screaming, I bet that's Charles Benson, it is Charles Benson.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So what a granddad to have. I mean, he must have been...
Yeah, I mean, like, to be fair, he was a bit of a wanker, really, as a granddad. He was always very self-involved and things like that. It's been great working in racing and hearing stories about him from other people, and people speak of him very fondly, albeit with a small sort of wink and a nudge to know that he might not always have been as charming as he made out. But yeah, no, it's been quite funny. It's sort of not. It's not something that I readily volunteer because my mum points out to me that I have some tendencies and characteristics similar to Charles Benson, but then lots of other things very dissimilar. So yeah, I wouldn't ever want to be lumped in with the Charles Benson bandwagon. But yeah, no, it's been fun, and the stories are amazing and of their time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's unique.
Well, he must have been a lot of fun to be around for Robert Sangster to be quite happy to, like you say, sort of subsidise some of the lifestyle. But it wasn't all fun and games, was it? Because you told me that both your dad and your granddad were at some point addicted gamblers.
Yeah.
Did that sort of ruin any passion that they had for the sport, and more importantly, you?
I mean, I think it's impossible for it to not have a negative impact on one as a punter if you're losing material, meaningful amounts of money. You know, the whole idea of punting is it's meant to be fun. Well, for me anyways, it's meant to be fun. It's meant to enhance my enjoyment of it. And, you know, seeing them, particularly my dad, you know, I wasn't that close to my granddad, as I sort of alluded to, but particularly seeing my dad, you know, watch these races, and I know that he's had his absolute bollocks on, and just seeing his horse get beaten, just him being crestfallen, it was quite tough to see firsthand. And you know, he's been magnificent since. He hasn't had a punt in 6 years, and sort of I've been to Gamblers Anonymous meetings with him and stuff like this, and I've learned a whole load about, you know, probably understanding more about what I saw as a sort of a kid growing up around the negatives of punting and the impact that can have on people's lives and the way it makes you change as a person. You know, you start to hide things, you start to be more secretive, and it was certainly something I've been very conscious of all the way through to make sure I avoid that, and make sure and help other people avoid it as well.
We'll talk about that in a bit, but I mean, I'm interested in how, if it's not too painful for you, how badly did it impact? Because if you're a family that's relatively affluent,
yeah.
Did it mean that you had to change schools, or the fees weren't paid, or anything that drastic?
No, nothing that drastic. I mean, it clearly put a massive strain on my parents' marriage, and all that kind of stuff. I think you get to a point where you're quite good at hiding it. You know, you sort of let the kids carry on as they are, and I'm sure there were more machinations going on behind the scenes that I wasn't fully aware of, but. No, we were fortunate in that regard, in that it wasn't marriage ending or sort of or life ending, you know. But it was definitely, you know, Dad will be the first to admit, he'll be like, God, I'm so much happier for not betting, and it has been. I'm glad I've gone through that experience before coming and working in gambling, because it's really opened my eyes. Especially attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings.
Yeah, tell us about that. Why did you go along? Was it to make sure he went, or?
No. It's so every 6 months they have the sort of the open sessions where you can bring the people, the attendees can bring along family and friends and things like that. So I went along to a couple of sessions with him there, sort of support him, and you know, it's a whole range of people and a whole range of different stages with different levels of addiction, but the commonality is the same. It's the damage that being out of control with your punting can do. And it's the same as it being out of control with drinking, or being out of control with drugs, or even being out of control with shopping. You know, anything like this where you compulsively do something, it is, you know, remarkably damaging if let go unchecked.
So is becoming, I've had people say it to me before, that they became good gamblers because they were compulsive gamblers.
Mm.
So is the fact that you enjoy the actual act of punting so much driven you to become good at that?
Yeah, I think so, because nobody likes to be wrong and nobody likes to feel like an idiot. And as much as talking about backing Void Poor Estedes to win the champion chase, I knew that I'd got more lucky than I had got right, if you know what I mean. So it was sort of from there that I was like, cool, well, if I'm going to lose, I kind of want to know why I've lost and be able to justify in my own head why I've lost, but never to a position where I would be uncomfortable. And I remember one time I had an anti-post bet when I was at uni on long run to win the 2012 Gold Cup actually after that, and I'd had 100 quid on at 7-2 anti-post. It's very proper mug punting, and 100 quid was a load of money at Stillet. And I had 2 months on before, and for that 2 months I was miserable, just waiting for him to do a leg, and then he went and he got beat, and I was honestly relieved when he got beat. So I was like, oh, thank God, at least that's over. And I'll always remember that feeling. I never wanted to be in that position again.
Now, how do you feel? I mean, now you're working in the gambling industry.
Yeah.
As do I. So we get paid ultimately on the back of people losing their money.
Not the Tote now.
But potentially some of those people, those losers, are suffering.
Absolutely.
As or worse than your dad and your granddad did. So how do you
reconcile that?
Yes.
Right. It's difficult, and I think it would be easy to accuse me of a sort of cognitive dissonance, which I think would be not unfounded, but it's just I've always tried to be very, very conscious of it. And the Tote being a pool is you still have winners and losers within that, but the idea is that you're not directly profiting from people's losses, and particularly things like Tote Fantasy, which I've sort of founded. That is a way of trying to give people enjoyment and fun and engagement throughout a whole day's racing, with the chance to win big, but also whilst sort of maintaining a responsible level of spending. And I'm not saying that 7 quid, that there are lots of people out there for whom 7 grand is a responsible level of spending. It's all relative, but for me, it's about trying to make sure that punting is enjoyed in the right way. If you're an alcoholic, you need to not drink. But then, how many people are there out in the world that love a glass of wine? And that's sort of where I'm trying to get to with it all.
So you said that you told me that given that you witnessed firsthand what you did, that you feel you're uniquely placed to be a force for positive change. So what changes are needed? Oh, you said that people can do it and have fun.
Yeah.
But you think there's changes to be done. So what do you think should be done?
I mean, I think the gambling industry is moving in the right direction, courtesy of things like the white paper and things like that. I think for a long time it has been unchecked and unfettered in the practices it's been allowed to do. I look particularly at the way that the bigger bookies would have pursued people that they probably suspected were problem gamblers back in the day, but there were no repercussions for doing so. So that's obviously something close to my heart, because I saw the way that they would look after my dad and regularly open accounts for him, which he'd closed previously. So I think it's necessary to move towards the full understanding of what people can afford to spend and how they spend it and things like that. I also don't want punting to be a bad word. Like sometimes I say I work for a gambling company and people look at me like I'm a drug dealer or something. It's like you shouldn't be a social pariah for loving a punt. It's just like some people love it, some people hate it. We don't all have to do it, and I think trying to find ways of ticking the boxes for enjoyment for everyone who wants to have a bet is so important, and also not being shy of talking about it. I don't think we should hide as an industry and apologise over and over again for liking a punt. I think it's just about finding a way to make sure that we are all honest with ourselves, that we're safeguarding the people in the way that we should. Okay,
so we've mentioned a few times that you're working with the Tote.
Yeah.
Tell us all about it. You filled the PR role.
Yeah.
You're obviously, anybody can tell you're a very personable chap. I mean, is that still your role? Or is that something you enjoy doing?
Yes. I mean, it was very much for lack of a better option that that Tote sort of wheeled me out. It was just a case of we didn't have a full-time PR person, so it would either be me or Jamie Hart. We'd just get basically a Jamie who loved punting to go out and talk about racing. And I really enjoyed it. I got to work, I've got to work with so many people in the racing media who I looked up to for many years just as a fan. Like sort of Rory Delaghe and Andrew Mount and people like this, and obviously all the people in the broader media as well. And I've loved it. I've absolutely loved it. I've fumbled my way through it. But it has never been my full-time job. My full-time job was initially part of the commercial team, and now sort of doing my baby, which is Tote Fantasy.
Right, tell us all about the Tote Fantasy.
Now you're going to have to stop me here because I could talk about this all day. But yeah,
it's about 4 minutes.
Yeah, right.
That's quite a long time.
So it's basically trying to take the DFS model, the daily fantasy sports model from the States, with the likes of DraftKings and FanDuel, and apply that to UK horse racing. So rewind a bit, because a lot of people won't know what that is. I don't. So it's basically the reason why daily fantasy sports came about in the States was because they couldn't legally do sports betting. So this was a way of doing sports betting where, in a similar mold to fantasy football, but on a one-day basis, you'd be given a mythical budget from which you'd have to pick players in baseball, NFL, basketball, that kind of thing. And you scored points depending on how they performed, the individual players performed. And then you were just on a leaderboard, and then the winner was a big jackpot, and then sort of the top 20% would make money on a gradiented level. And it was a way for people to bet on sport where fixed odds wasn't allowed. So it started out of necessity, but what it did was it sort of built this thriving industry that they've now legalised sports betting properly, and now they're just desperately trying to convert everyone into sports betting and fixed odds and casino and things like that. Because undoubtedly, on average return per customer basis, it's much more profitable to have people betting fixed odds and casino because you get the money out of them quicker. But daily fantasy sports still retains this incredible engagement ability, and it's still profitable in itself. It's a bet, you pay for it, there's a takeout, so it's a standalone revenue generative product. But my thing was more like, I want to build this game for me, and I hope that other people will play it, but I'm sure if I want to play it this badly, there will be other people who want to play it.
But this revolves around horse racing.
And this revolves around horse racing. And the reason why nobody would have done it over here is because it wouldn't necessarily be cost effective. Because why would you get someone who is already betting horses fixed odds with you to play this other product where the stakes are a bit lower and your ability to earn money off that customer is less? So I understand why people haven't done it, but it also means that doesn't, especially in the world of responsible gambling and the direction of travel we're moving in, that doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. And like I say, I built it because I was just obsessed by the idea, and I love playing it. We sort of started out as a spreadsheet amongst friends, and it's now, it's now going great guns. It's sort of growing every week, and I think in this coming jump season we should see some decent numbers.
So what sort of numbers are we talking about at the moment?
So we sort of properly launched in February, and we've had about 5,000 players play it. We've had just a tad over 500,000 of turnover. So it's from a standing start with very, very limited marketing budget, I'm pretty chuffed. It's really just speaks to the strength of the game. I've been very lucky to build it with some really, really talented people at the Tote, and they've done unbelievable things with it. And yeah, it's exciting. I proper plug time. I would love anyone listening to this just to give it a try, because I think it's excellent.
All right, finally, I was going to say you've worked hard and struggled to find your passion in the city. Something you said to me, not something I've just pulled out of the air. Yeah. So have you found what you're looking for now, but in the betting industry?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love it. I mean, I dread my bosses seeing this because it's a great excuse to not pay me. But this is as much a hobby as anything else. There are many days where it's still work, but yeah, I absolutely love it. I get to talk about racing. I get to build this game that I love, and I'm fascinated by it and improve it, and see people play it and enjoy it. It's deeply rewarding, and it's certainly I found my passion. Yeah, put it that way.
And have you looked at all as to what's next, or is this it for the time being?
Hopefully this is it. I'm really focused on making fantasy the best it can be and growing it and helping the Tote succeed as well. You know, it's a great and very honourable mission that the Tote's setting out to do, you know, to try and improve the funding mechanism of racing and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, no, I'm keen to kick on and help grow the sport. But yeah, really, I'm already thinking about my bloody Cheltenham anti-postbook.
You better get back to studying the form then on that.
Yeah.
Jamie Benson, thank you very much.
Thanks, Simon.